this is an exciting time for me. I see some of my friends in there, so I appreciate you making the time to come and listen. But it's a great time for all of us to learn from each other. So I would like to keep it a little bit interactive in here. I know it's hard to be interactive when we are in Zoom, but we've got the chat in there. So let's see if we could interact. So feel free to eat. If you want, if this is your lunch break, I'm okay with that. Just mute it so other people will not hear a lot of noise from your wherever you are. So last time we did a presentation on managing expectation in relationships, and some of you wanted to have a part 2. And as I thought more about the comments that we received, mostly it was managing basically the desire was to have more about the cultural expectations. So I hope I'm meeting the expectations of most of you today. We're going to talk about how to manage cultural expectations in the therapist office. And as I look at who is present today, I can see that a couple of my friends who are foreigners are in here. So I've got a question for you. Maybe we can start our presentation with this. Tell us about a time, please use the chat. Tell us about a time that as you came to the United States, or when you came to the United States, you were misunderstood, or you misunderstood the culture, or somebody, or you saw something that you just did not understand and asked yourself the question, why do they do that? And the reason why I'm asking you that is that I had all of those 3 questions when I thought about this presentation. I said, yeah, I had this and I had that. So let's see, what is some of our participants' experience as you guys have come in the United States? Do we have any daring souls? Kimberly? Oh, here is Kimberly. My culture is more direct in communicating likes or dislikes. So when a friend asked me if I liked a new item she bought, I told her that I did not think it fit her right, and she was hurt. Kimberly, I think I was in that particular experience, and I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about that. But that is something that, yes, that is something that I have experienced too. I also come from a culture that when somebody asks me about their opinion, what do you think? I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. If you are my friend and you ask me what do I think, I'm going to tell you what do I think, rather than protect you and save you. So that's one difference that we have noticed. That's quite a that's quite common. It's just differences in communication. How do we talk to friends? Okay. Florian, I'm going to pick on you. I know that you are also from a different culture. Have you had any experiences? You know what? If somebody would like to share, I'm from Albania. It's a small European country by Italy and Greece. And while we are very close to our families, we are also a culture that do not express intimacy in public. So one of the very first things that I actually saw here in the United States is physical intimacy at church. And I could not believe. My question that I asked others is, you guys do this even at church? And it was kind of a very, very common practice, but to me it was different. I did not really understand. Another experience that I had was when I went to school to become a therapist, and in one of our classes, it was discussed how it was an adolescent class. It was discussed how American adolescents get attention from their parents by getting into trouble. So basically, negative behavior provides the attention from the parents. I could not wrap my mind around that concept. To me, I came from a culture that if you wanted the attention from your parents, you do well. The positive behavior was rewarded. So for me to shift that thinking, especially with learning to become a therapist and learning to work with teenagers, I had to really complete that shifting and think about this is different. That's a different culture. It's a different concept in here. Teenagers get attention by getting in trouble rather than by receiving that positive attention. Okay, let's see some other comments that were made in here. Creating boundaries has caused me and my family a lot of heart because I came from a culture of enmeshment. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about enmeshment today. Parents openly inviting their kids partners and talking about sex in the American culture. Heartache. Okay, that's what I thought. Yes, Chandini, boundaries are different in this culture as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about this as well. Okay, well, thank you for sharing. For you who felt comfortable to share those thoughts that you had, I appreciate that. Let's move now to our presentation. And one thing that I'd like you guys to remember is that it's only 1 hour. We can't really get to the bottom of everything. We can't really get so much in depth of this because it's just 1 hour presentation and the topic is so broad. So my hope is that you will get something from this presentation today that you can use, that you can increase your awareness and you can use with your different clients that you are coming to work with. What's culture? It's really a multi-layered concept. It's influenced by so many issues like nationality, language, class, religion, gender, but it's so much more than that. When I think of culture, it's not simply thinking about somebody who is from a different country, somebody who speaks with an accent, somebody who's got a different skin color. It's so much more than that. Culture has to do with our unique stories, with our unique backgrounds, with our unique beliefs. Everybody, regardless who you are, where you're from, everybody has that uniqueness. Even the ones who are saying, I'm probably bland, I'm just like everybody else. No, you are not, because you bring your own family culture. So all of us are so unique with what we bring. But when we come to a different culture, our uniqueness, yes, it's unique, but we really clash with the other culture. And sometimes we don't know what to do. And I'm going to talk about some of my personal experiences. As you can see, you can probably detect my accent. I can't get rid of that. But starting to live in America, the first few years were not really smooth sailing because I had to learn how to really function in this culture. I had to learn what people do in this culture, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and I had to adapt. There are times that I see that the host culture adapts to the people who are coming in this culture, and that's great. But there are also times that the rest of some of us who are the foreigners, we have to adapt much more. We have to do more adapting to the host culture because we have to really understand the norms, the values, the behaviors, the thinking. So there is more adaptation that we have to do. Okay, why are we talking about cultural expectations? It's really a necessary thing in therapy. It's not just well, it's nice to know where this client is coming from, and I'm trying to learn their values and understanding. It's really an essential part of our therapy because we can't necessarily understand a client and be able to provide that best treatment for that client unless we understand where that client is coming from, what is the background. Think about an iceberg. What you see at the top is my accent, maybe clothing, if I still have clothing from my own country. You can see what kind of food I like, what kind of music I listen, but that's not necessarily what makes me me. What makes me me is what is difficult for the therapist to see. What I bring in therapy might not necessarily be very obvious to see. If I'm your client from a different culture, it's very difficult for you to understand first, what is my self-image? What self-image did I have in my country, and how has that shifted here in the United States? What are the family roles that I value, and how they are differing from my culture to the host culture? What are the work ethics, the attitudes toward maybe education, towards boundaries, towards openness as well? Because all of those are going to impact the therapy. You know, I told you at first I'm going to bring some experiences, so feel free to laugh at my expense today, and that will be okay. I think we all have permission to do that. So some experiences will be okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And some experiences will be probably funny, and it's okay to laugh. But self-image was something that I struggled with in the very beginning. And while I have a high self-esteem, that change coming from a culture that I knew how to do everything. I was one of the best at everything. And then coming to this culture that, oh, wow, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to navigate the education system. I don't know what it means to do this. I don't know if I can say this. So being so reserved that I needed to understand what's going on at first, and also being able to understand that, well, if you were one of the best in your country, you're not one of the best here in the United States. That was very difficult. And it took a lot of work and adjustment and understanding of my own self and understanding of the culture for me to really function in the way that I function today. And who knows, maybe there are things that my American friends say, why do you do that? there are still things that I'm influenced by my own culture. And I came in the States when I was 24. So growing up was in a different culture. So all the forming years were from a different culture. And there were times that I felt that I don't belong in any of the cultures. I've been taken away, so to speak, from my own culture for so many years, but I haven't fully immersed in the host culture, in the American culture. So sometimes I feel like I'm walking in both cultures, and I'm trying to decide which culture is more the culture that defines me. And I think none of those cultures fully define me. I'm still a dual cultural person. So culture is something that that influences us, and it's going to influence us, or it's going to impact us for the rest of our lives. Okay, why are we talking about cultural expectations? We're talking about this because it really impacts how the treatment, basically, how do people from different cultures see treatment, especially for mental health? Do they actually seek treatment? What are their treatment seeking patterns? How do they view health and illnesses? And what is the relationship, the therapeutic relationships that they are going to create with the therapist? So we're going to address those three areas today. Okay, treatment seeking attitudes. There is a lot of stigma. We do have the stigma in the United States when it comes to mental health illness, but different cultures have also some more pronounced stigma. Some cultures are very slow to seek therapy because they are afraid of several reasons, and we're going to go and review those reasons. But what they are doing is that they're not even coming to therapy. They don't see mental health as an issue that you can actually talk to somebody, or they come to therapy quite much later when the problem has become really a bigger problem. I actually come from a country that mental health did not even exist. Therapy was not a profession. So I came in the United States. I could see that there were issues in families. My father actually did a lot of counseling for his siblings. He's not a therapist by training, but he did that. And seeing what kind of counseling he did with his sibling, I actually got an interest. So that was my first exposure to counseling. I took from my father, I guess, and I thought there should be something about this profession. Why don't we have it? And when I came in the United States, I saw that there was a counseling profession. So I actually started this profession out of, we are lacking this in our culture and we need to have it. So if somebody from my own culture struggles with something, they are not even going to think about, can I go to somebody, because that profession doesn't exist. We don't take care of our mental health. We simply just get better, or we just don't treat it at all. So you also need to think about some of those clients that you are going to come in contact with. They come from a nature that focuses so much on collectivism rather than individualism. And these particular cultures, they do not encourage seeking help outside of the family group. So you probably have come into contact with people who receive help from their elders in the community, or receive help from different family members, but they don't necessarily want to go to they don't want to go to a therapist. If you are dealing with a couple who has marital issues, and let's say the wife is an American and the husband is from a different culture, you have invited the husband to come to therapy. He's reluctant to come to therapy. Might not necessarily be he's not willing. What if the concern there is the husband is thinking, I can't get my family business out there. I don't want to talk to a stranger. So think about basically this. I hope that this presentation will be something to help you with shifting some of your attitudes and shifting some of your thinking. Somebody from a different culture, when they think about coming to therapy, they're going to think about, what does it mean for my family? Am I protecting my family's dignity? And if you are looking at this PowerPoint slide, protecting family's reputation is put before personal dignity. It's not a mistake. Family reputation actually is held in higher regard than their personal dignity, because it's a collectivist culture. So that's something to think about. They don't want to be seen as crazy, especially for cultures that do not have the profession of mental health. Asking somebody to come and talk about things that are not physical pain, basically, it's something they are going to think about, it's in my head. Something is wrong with me. People are going to think that I'm crazy. So protecting the family unit, protecting the family's reputation and their own personal dignity, it's not going to make a client from another culture come so easily to therapy. They also might have intergenerational trauma, where the therapist is seen as part of the problem. They might have prior experiences with racism and discrimination. Some of them, actually, I've had a few clients who were from a different country, and to bring them to therapy, their main concern was fear of deportation. They were not also willing to complete the assessments because they did not know what questions we were going to ask, and they were fearing that one of the questions would be, are you a legal citizen of the United States? Some people who come from different cultures live in poverty, so they are afraid that if they come to therapy, they might lose some of the services they receive. So there are a lot of issues or a lot of reasons that can keep somebody from a different culture away from therapy. If we could understand those issues, then we can help those clients come to receive the services and to receive the help that they need. How do they view health and illnesses? Question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is normal and what is abnormal behavior? And is abnormal behavior or normal behavior the same in America and in Albania, where I'm from? Probably not. There are certain cultural constructs that cannot really be generalized between different cultures. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time with this. Assertive versus disrespectful. When I worked in a residential facility, we were working with I remember working with some girls who were not assertive, and we were talking to them, or we were teaching them how to express themselves. And then in one of our therapist meeting, it dawned to me, and I said, we don't even have the right word in my language, again, think about this culture not having the therapy profession at all. We don't have the vocabulary for therapy. We don't have the word for assertive. And if I think about what assertive means, in my culture, it would be completely teaching somebody to be disrespectful of their elders. So you could see that you've got to understand where the client is coming from rather than what the client is lacking. I remember another case in one of our therapist meeting. Our recreational therapist has done an assessment with a girl from one of the tribes of Alaska. She came to therapist meeting and she said, "Oh, this girl is not really engaging. She kept her head down, did not even look at me, did not make any eye contact for the whole time of the interview." Our clinical director was there, and the wise man that he was, he said, "Oh, wait a minute, where is she from?" And the recreational therapist said she's from one of the tribes in Alaska. That is when he did some education for all of us and said, "She's not engaging, she's being respectful to you by not looking at you in the eye." So we've got to understand those different colors of every single culture that we work with, rather than put an equal sign of those behavior with the American cultural construct, because they just do not match. They just do not match. In my culture, we are taught to be more withdrawn. And being withdrawn is basically, you are taught to be withdrawn in classrooms, you are taught to be withdrawn at work, you are taught to be withdrawn at home. This way, you're being compliant. But my compliance, me trying to be compliant in this culture, is really going to label me as withdrawn, not the right cultural construct. Kimberly, here is your comment. And when I prepared this presentation, I totally thought about this. Particular experience. Kimberly and I went to school together, and we decided to take a trip with one of our American friends. And we went to Nashville to attend a conference. On the way to, basically on our trip, our American friend wanted to buy a purse. And she comes excited and shows the two of us the purse and says, "What do you think?" And both of us who are foreigners said to her, "No, it doesn't fit you. Not a good purse." She didn't say anything. And then in the car, maybe 20 minutes later, she said, "I can't believe the two of you. In America, we would not say that." And we said, "Well, what should we have said? What should we have told you?" She said a better response could have been, "Well, if you like it, you could buy it." And then the two of us went, "You told us, what do we think?" We expressed our thoughts. So, but you could see, I could have been perceived as rude by somebody else, when in my own mind, I'm being honest with somebody. So the different construct of the culture, they are quite different. They're quite differently. If you have a husband, I'm picking on a husband, I guess, today. If you have a husband who is in therapy, but doesn't seem to understand, maybe it's not really an issue of unwilling to understand. Maybe he does not have the vocabulary. Maybe what you are teaching him, let's say if you are teaching him to be more assertive, for example, maybe that construct does not make sense to him. So before we start teaching how to behave in this new culture, what is normal or abnormal behavior, maybe we should understand where the clients are coming from. I come from a family with 4 kids, and we are very close to each other. If you come and visit my home, you'd probably say we are enmeshed. And I would say that doesn't work for me. It's not enmeshed. My family relations are so close, but it's a close family. If I have a problem, the first one that I go to talk to is my family. An American therapist will probably look at this family and say, "You guys are enmeshed." For me, it's not enmeshment at all. It's functional. It's so close, it's functional, that even if you are going to teach me how to differentiate from my family, it will not work for me. So some of the constructs are not going to have really that equal sign. There are so many other things that cultures different from each other. How do we do the grieving? How do we look at gender roles? I come from a culture that the women do everything in the family. I mean, inside the house, the women is basically the cooking, the cleaning, and everything. And when my first encounter in America, I saw a husband who helped with household chores, and I said, that is so cool. I don't see this in my culture. My mom did everything, and she worked. My dad, who was excellent, an excellent father, but also I did not really see him do much of those domestic tasks because they were the wife's jobs. The gender roles are very different in different cultures. How do we see marriage? How do we see cohabitation? How do we see children out of wedlock? If you are from my culture, if you have been engaged once or married once and divorced or widow, you actually have much less chances to get remarried again because you have been married prior to this. You have been married before. So our culture looks down to those previous relationships. And here in the United States, I don't see that. And that's wonderful. People get remarried. People who have never married, they marry somebody who has actually had children before, and it's wonderful, but not in my culture. So you could see how if I'd function in that culture and come in here, I would really have a difficult time with those things. How do we grieve? I'll tell you also another example from my own family. We had a death in the family. This was years ago. And both families, my family and my brother-in-law passed away, and my brother-in-law family was there, and we grieved so different. We grieved so differently. In my family, we were just we were sad, we were crying, we were not even able to comfort each other. And the other family was just happier. Both families had the same understanding that the deceased person is going to a better place, is going to heaven. But how did we grieve on our own was so different that we clashed. And it was very difficult to see. At some point, it looked like some of people in my family had the thoughts, do they care with what we are going through? To them, it is, we're celebrating his life. We were mostly focused on, we just lost somebody. So the grieving, the patterns of grieving were just difficult, and it really creates a lot of difficulties and sometimes misunderstanding. We misunderstood the other family because they were more cheerful than we were. Okay, how do we view health and illness? Again, for somebody like me from a different culture, we don't really go. We go to the doctor when we are hurting physically, but we don't go to a therapist when we are having a hard time with our emotions. We actually don't express our emotions. We don't have certain words in our vocabulary to express emotions. When I was in my country getting ready to come to the United States, I had some good lessons. But one of the questions that I did not understand, did not make sense at all, was the question, how do you feel about this? I come from a language of thinking, not a language of feeling. So when people would ask me, how do you feel about this? At first I would say, what does this mean? And I would respond with, I feel well, physically well. That was not the right answer to the question, but I did not understand the question. Then when I recognized that they are asking me, what do I think about what is being discussed, that is when I started to ask them back, you mean, what do I think? So I had to really understand that what they are telling me is, what they're asking me is something completely else, something completely different. They're asking me what I think about the discussion points that we are having. Till I made the transition to how do you feel means what do I think. But that's really a transition that I had to make. So when you're asking somebody from a different culture, how do you feel? and they're just looking at you like they never heard you say, or they never heard anybody else ask them that question, maybe they're coming from a culture of thinking, and they don't know how to respond when you are asking them, how do you feel? So just be aware of that. And in some culture, when we talk about painful issues, they just painful experiences, their belief is that if I talk about this, I will experience more painful feelings. So why do you want me to talk about this? Some cultures come from, that happened years ago, I don't want to talk about this. I'm here today, I want to talk about today. So they can't really understand that something emotional that they have not worked through, it's going to bother them today as well. We've got differences in spirituality and religion. Different cultures are going to attribute their suffering as a religious thing. So many cases of faith-based medical neglect. Parents who have had children with illnesses, physical illnesses or mental illnesses, and they saw this as, well, we have a gifted child. They attribute the suffering as a gift to them from God. So really, it can be something to understand. Or a lot of individuals who put more emphasis in spirituality and not on taking care of the mental health, they're going to cope with whatever they are struggling with the emotional pain, by using their faith only, rather than they can use both faith and receiving the professional treatment, the professional help. But some of them will not really think about the professional help because they will rely on their spirituality and their religion. In some cultures, healing is also considered as a product of interdependence. So you are going to see that the family is going to be the therapist. The elders of the tribe will be the therapist. So they are not going to come out to a professional therapy, because they are going to do this through their rituals, through their religious rituals, tribe rituals, and not necessarily receive the professional help that they need. So just to be aware of where are clients coming from and what are some of their thinking. And then we come to our third item that we had in our slide in there, therapeutic relationship. As a foreigner, I remember when I came in here, everything was different. Even schooling was different. I had to understand what it means to take credits, what it means to have 12 credits for one semester. This was completely foreign language to me. I had no idea what it meant. It was meeting with several people to understand what's going on. I needed resources. And to be left on my own, I couldn't possibly solve the puzzle. I needed somebody to guide me. So when it comes to the therapeutic relationship, as a therapist, you're not just somebody who are going to heal. That will be the first thing, the healing, but you're also going to be doing more than just healing. You're going to provide resources. You're probably going to be the only person that they are connected to in this culture that they can possibly open up to. Remember that as you are providing this healing, you're also going to be the person who is connecting and building that bridge between the two different cultures. And sometimes we talk about therapeutic boundaries very often, and we should be talking about therapeutic boundaries. But those therapeutic boundaries with somebody from a different culture will look a little bit different. You will know how they are. Different cultures will have different therapeutic boundaries or different boundaries, and you will have to make them therapeutic, but you are going to see that they are going to be a little bit different. And that's okay to have some differences in those boundaries with people from different cultures. All right, how do we manage now these cultural differences? What are some things that we need to be aware of? Well, the first one, really understand the cultural context. You might not fully understand because you cannot immerse yourself fully into that particular culture. And you might have clients from different cultures, four or five cultures. It's not possible for you to really understand everything, but make an effort. Make an effort and try to understand as much as you can. And sometimes you're going to have the client teach you about the different cultures. But cultural differences are honestly more complex than just simply noticing my accent. My accent is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more in me, a person from a different culture, than what I can show just from my accent. Simply being from a different country is not just okay, she's from Albania, we understand that. You have to go deep down to understand how it is for me, an Albanian female, whatever that is, to be here in the United States. It's more effective to discuss, here's an example that I've had in here, more effective to discuss what it means to be a young, second-generation Japanese American male without a degree, a college degree, than to simply help that person cope with depression and anxiety. He might come for depression and anxiety, but we all know that Japanese, this is kind of a stereotyping here, but Japanese culture is focused quite a bit on education. And to have a young Japanese male who does not have a college degree, what does that mean for him, for his self-esteem, for his family? Is he considered as the shame of the family because he's the only one in his family who does not have a college degree? So you can really see it's not just about depression and anxiety. There are so many cultural constructs that can create the depression and anxiety. While we feel sad, all of us experience sadness and happiness probably in the same way, but how we express it, it's differently. You know, a little bit earlier, I said to you, we don't even have the vocabulary in my culture for certain cultural construct. I actually have been quite interested in how my language has evolved. And if I hear the news, my mother watches the news in Albanian, and if I hear the news with her, there are so many words that are English words, and they have been transliterated. One of those words is the word vulnerable. So look at that. We don't have the word for vulnerable. We don't have actually, I guess the meaning probably has started to be introduced because they created the word. But the word vulnerable is transliterated as well. And the problem with that is that we don't have the vocabulary. So we just took a English term and we just changed just one letter in there and we said, this is our word. But there are so many other words that the language does not have. That means the concept is not there. And when the concept is not there, that means people are not going to pay attention. So mental health has so many, or actually I would say the English language has so many wonderful words that describe mental health that other cultures do not have. And if I am here in the United States and it is my first month, I'm struggling with adjustment and I'm coming to therapy, and you're asking me to, am I willing to be vulnerable? I don't even know what you are talking about. I need to understand the concept. I need to understand the word. I need to understand what it means. So sometimes you're going to see that some of those stares in the sessions and kind of the dumb look that we might have probably sometimes, it's not because we're not willing. We just don't understand the difference between our culture and this culture. And a lot of times what we do when we first come to the United States, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, because everybody has their own experiences, but I take my own patterns of living and try to apply those in a different culture. That's the only way for me to learn, and I'm going to learn by the mistakes I'm going to make. If you were in the previous presentation that we did with the expectation, or I'm not quite sure if I shared this, it doesn't matter, but I shared one time that one of my first experiences in the United States is small talk was, what profession do you have and how much do you make? Not the right conversation. But I was also surprised that people were okay to talk about their sex life, but not about their money. For us, it's different. We won't tell you anything about our sex life, but we will tell you about the money. So differences in between cultures. And the only way to really learn how to adjust yourself is to actually make mistakes and learn. Invitations to family events, you would not really think about those things unless you have experienced those. We had a neighbor one time from a different country who invited us to come to dinner with his house at his home. And the very first thing after we accepted the invitation, I said to him, "What do you like? Can we bring something? What can we bring to dinner?" Well, I offended him big time. To him, it was, if I'm asking you to dinner, you come and eat what I have and you don't bring anything. So not knowing this culture myself, I made the mistake of offending somebody, and I did not even know that I offended, but he let me know that he was very offended by my question of what can we bring. So just understanding how we operate in different cultures can give us that information about how do our clients respond to our therapy sessions. Stay curious, always learn. Cultures always evolve. You might say, well, I had some exposure 5 years ago. I went to Africa and I learned about the African culture, and I have an African family coming. I think I know. Well, it's 5 years ago. Cultures evolve, so our understanding of cultures and our understanding of the patterns and the behaviors, what is normal, what is abnormal, needs to be up to date, constantly learn. And again, you're not going to be able to learn everything about every culture, but if you are going to notice that you are probably working more with one or two specific cultures, try to learn a little bit more about those two specific cultures so you can actually create a deeper connection with your clients. And the more you learn, the more curious you are, the more you are going to create that connection with them, and that connection is going to make sure that breakthrough is happening in therapy. Adjust our expectations. I'm not saying lower the expectations, but adjust them. And what I'm trying to say with this is therapy is not going to go as fast as you are expecting, because probably somebody like me in therapy will need an understanding of different concepts that you are going to teach me. You have to teach me first what you mean by being vulnerable. You have to teach me first what do you mean by being assertive. And you have to teach me how to be assertive without being rude or without being perceived as rude by my family before I start working in therapy. So that's why I'm saying adjust your expectations, because some of your therapy will be psychoeducation, just teaching me about what is okay here, what is not okay in the States, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And you're going to find the right approach. You will know your clients, but sometimes talk therapy does not work with everyone, especially for refugees who have had extremely difficult experiences, or people who have had post-traumatic stress from coming out of the war. Talking about painful events might be very painful in therapy. Eventually you might get in there, but maybe expressive therapies can be much more helpful. So as you are going to find that connection with your client, you're also going to understand what is the best approach for them. We talked a little bit about this, basically understand where they're coming from. Is it a thinking or a feeling language? And you might do some adjustments. So instead of asking me, how do you feel about this? Maybe ask me, what do you think? I will know how to respond to this much better than if you tell me, or if you ask me, what do I feel? Don't wait for the client to bring this up, to bring the culture differences. They might not. They are not the first one who are going to bring this. They might also think that, well, if you are going to detect my accent, you can probably know that I'm foreigner and I need to be treated differently. And some of them might not want you to treat differently. They want to basically adjust to the culture, so they might prefer that you treat them the same. But at the same time, how do we treat them in therapy should be different, because there is a different culture. They need to understand. Or we need to understand where they are coming from. The client may assume that we are culturally aware of their culture.
Far from agree.
Can somebody mute Okay, thank you. So they might assume that we are aware and we are not. However, just understand that if you have an acute patient, acute client, you've got to take care of the crisis first before we actually before we work on other items in therapy. And use your clinical judgment. If you have a client who is not interested in you exploring culture differences, but you are interested because you think, I need to understand you, you might be perceived as pushy. But on the other hand, if the client is interested, but you say, I got it, I know where you're coming from, then you are going to be perceived as non-caring. So really find that balance. Several years ago, I made a mistake with a Native American family. I was treating two of their children. They were two brothers. They were young. They were 10 and 12 years old. And strategically, they placed the kids with me because I was the only foreigner therapist at that particular time in that facility. Well, I had heard about the generational trauma, but I had not really spent much time with that. So I was not aware. And I did not address the cultural differences in the very beginning of the therapy. That was my mistake. I did not think it was an issue. Therapy started okay, but it came to a point that we were not making any progress. And as we are talking about different things in therapy, out of the blue, the mother says, don't listen to her. She's the white man. And as soon as I heard that, I said, oh my gosh, that was a mistake, a big mistake that I just recognized. I should have discussed cultural differences in the very beginning of therapy. When the mother said she's the white man, everything came. It was the piece of the puzzle that I was missing, and everything made sense. We had these kiddos with we had male staff that were white. So we had these kiddos with with white males who were telling them what to do. The kids were not complying. Of course, they were not complying. They were the white men. So we had completely not taken in consideration this intergenerational trauma, and we did not discuss it in the very beginning of therapy. We got stuck. But when mother said that she's the white man, it made sense. It took us a little bit of time to really mend that relationship, but we did. And at the very end, the mother brought me some little gifts from her own tribe. And at that time, my policy was, I just want, if you have to give me a gift, give me a card, nothing else. I was not receiving gifts, but she was one of the clients that I gracefully took the gifts, and I enjoyed those gifts. Again, the boundaries. I had set some boundaries. I'm not going to receive gifts, but with this particular mother, I had to change my boundaries. I received the gifts and I enjoyed them, but that's how it's important for us to recognize those differences right away. Don't wait as I did and make mistakes that I made. A lot of times we see something that, well, a lot of times we focus on the differences, but maybe we could talk about differences after we have talked about similarities. When we find the similarities, we create more connection with our clients and they become more comfortable with us. So start with that if you can, and it really improves your credibility, increases your credibility, because they are saying, oh, she gets it and she knows a little bit about my culture. So it really increases that connection. There are times that people from different culture might not really understand something that is inappropriate or abnormal behavior. This is actually quite often happens with disciplining of children. Something that is perceived okay in a different culture, it's not perceived as an okay thing in here. It might be perceived as abuse. Before I became a therapist, I was an elementary teacher, and I would have parents who would come to me and say, if he doesn't do his homework, hit him. And I said, I'm not hitting a first grader. No way I would do that. But that's the culture there. It was called disciplining. Here, it would be considered as an abuse. So if you have any families or any clients who are still living in the United States simply by using the same patterns from their old culture, they will need to understand, they will need to have those moments that you can understand, you can help them understand what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And as you are working on bridging that cultural gap, one thing that I'd like you guys to remember is that excuse me, differences are not deficits. If you can help your clients understand that, you have won half of that battle. And with my accent, I did not say a bottle like something that you drink from. Oh, I got to laugh now so I can actually not cry. But a lot of times when we see differences, we think of they lack on something. They don't. Differences can be assets. So if the clients can understand that, they can also help themselves with adjusting better to the new culture. Okay. All right. Whew. Okay, how are we doing with time? Not much. You guys are going to get those slides, so I'm not going to finish this presentation. You can read those, but really understand that you could ask your client, please let me know if there is anything I say that does not fit with you, with your values, with your life experience. I'd like for you to challenge my thoughts, as I think it will be useful in our work together. The more transparent you are with your clients, even when you are not necessarily understanding the culture, but the most transparent you are with them and the more willing you are to learn from what they have to teach you, the better relationship you are going to get with your clients. The best approach for treating culturally diverse clients is to practice humility, responsiveness, and integration. I'm going to go very fast through this. What is humility? Really come across as not from a superior stance. Yes, you've got the benefit, the advantage of being a local in your own culture, and I'm not. But think about what if the places are reversed? How are you going to handle yourself if you are in a different culture? So come across as you are at the same level and you are willing to learn, but you are not, don't have that attitude of superiority. Cultural humility, value others, value their experiences, what they have accomplished. Be curious and learn from others. And cultural humility also is a process. Be willing to grow and to learn more from the conversations that you have with your patients, with your clients. And responsiveness, have empathy to understand and to conceptualize that client, the issues that they bring, based on their cultural background, based on their perception of distress rather than what you think they are struggling with. Ask them, what do you think the problem is? Not what do you feel, right? What do you think caused this problem? What do you think can help? And sometimes they might not know, and you are going to jump in and give them the resources, but do ask for their expertise because they have it. It's a different type of expertise, but they have it. Cultural integration. You could be all of the above, basically recognize and accept differences, consider their social identity, but also if you want to integrate them, have the assessment in their language, because they will be understanding the cultural construct much better than in the English language. Have some images, some decorations, some objects in your own offices that are actually from their own culture. Again, you cannot do it for every single culture, but if you are working with one or two, you're going to find that people are going to feel much more comfortable in your office when they have something to connect with. If they see a painting, a picture, a photograph, anything that you can connect them with their own culture, it will be much better for them to feel more comfortable. I've got some tips for therapists in here, but most of those tips can basically come from what we have. You can read them, and some of those are a little bit of kind of a summary. But one thing that I'd like to direct your attention to is the last point in here. Instead of radical change, because to us, when you are to the client, when you are asking us to do something else, when you're asking me to be assertive, when you're asking me to be disengaged, or what's the word? Not enmeshed, but the opposite. I can't think of now. When you're asking me to basically differentiate from my own family, when you're asking me to be something else, I might not have that construct. So sometimes if you are going to ask me for a radical change, what I'm going to think about is I'm going to actually have a struggle with my own family. But what you can do is ask me to do the renewal of certain behaviors. And what that means is, I think it's more appropriate concept, because you are improving certain things. You're still keeping the connection, but you are improving some of the behaviors that can help you that can help you adjust in the new culture, but you are not just doing that radical change. This doesn't work, you have to be here. So the expression, when in Rome, do as Romans do. Yes, do as Romans do, but it's going to come gradually. We have to learn what the Romans do first, and we have to learn how is that going to influence our own relationships with families before we actually become and act as the Romans do. So I know that we don't have much time, and I kind of rushed through these, but what questions do you have? If you have any questions, if you could put it in the chat, great. If not, then we can end this presentation. We committed to 1 hour, and we're just a few minutes after that. So thank you guys for coming. Joseph will send you the slides. So if you need to review those, please review. If any of you has any questions and would like to contact me, feel free to contact me as well. If there is any concept in there or anything that is not very clear, I'm more than willing to have a phone call with one of you and clarify some of the things. So feel free to contact me or Joseph.
And in case anyone missed it, I did put a link to the evaluation in the chat. So you have that and the code word that you need in order to verify that you were present today. It looks like we do have a couple questions coming in. Let's see. JC is asking for any tips for folks who are experiencing battle fatigue.
Say it again, Joseph. I didn't get it at all.
So JC is asking, do you have any tips for people who are experiencing battle fatigue? So maybe that have been in combat. I'm assuming that's what he's asking.
Oh, from combat?
Yeah, combat, battle fatigue, maybe. Is that what you're asking, JC? I think she's asking that.
Sometimes people just because of the experience they're having in their environment, especially people who might be marginalized, just as a collective, that community might experience battle fatigue. Like I oftentimes hear people saying that they just experience this fatigue of navigating through the systems and dealing with racism and things like that. So I was just wondering if you have tips.
I never worked battle fatigue. I've worked with refugees who have come from war. but not necessarily battle fatigue. With refugees, the therapy was not necessarily therapy at first. It was just simply being present there. I worked mostly with the children, and the children were, again, post-traumatic stress disorder. We engaged the children into just understanding how they can feel safe, but I don't have any experience with this particular issue, so I might not be the best one for tips on this. Anybody else in the audience? Maybe somebody else has that experience. Oh, Lisa has asked a question. What about unhealthy aspects of the culture, like one that allows wife beating? Absolutely. That is when one of the points in the presentation was teach provided information. I actually had a case one time that sexual abuse was actually normal. Not only we had to teach the family about you cannot really do this, but also we also had to report them to DCFS. So yes, you are do not allow the abuse, and with the wife beating, you also need to work with the wife on the safety plan. I will tell you this, safety planning with a wife that comes from a different culture is very difficult, because they have a hard time with leaving the husband who is the abuser. But we need to educate, because yes, different cultures also bring a lot of unhealthy, abnormal behavior, and it's a matter of educating them. Anybody has any idea about the battle that, what was
Yeah, battle fatigue.
the battle fatigue? I have not worked with any of those cases, so I'm not quite sure. Well, that will be something that maybe one of the people in the audience can do a presentation for us then. That might be something really interesting to see what are some of the interventions that we can do in those cases. I'm not the expert on that.
Yeah, that is a fascinating theme. If anyone, has any expertise or even just small experiences dealing with things like that, please offer any suggestions that you have, or if you're interested in, presenting, we can make that happen as well. We got some really good comments in the chat today, and I just wanted to kind of recognize a few of the earlier ones that came in. I know, let's see, Stan did answer our question. He said that my culture may seem to be less polite and perhaps more genuine or direct. After I lived in the United States of America for several years and visited my country, I realized it when I visited a store and perceived the store worker as rude when he asked me harshly to start putting items away from the cashier station. That's interesting.
Yep.
I like Lisa's joke. She said she heard a joke a long time ago. I'm unique, just like everyone else.
Just like everybody else. You know what somebody said? Part 3. So would somebody like to take part 3 on? This topic, I was telling Joseph before we started, it was so broad. It is so broad. And with 1 hour, we cannot really get into that. You could talk about cultural differences and cultural expectations the whole day. It's so broad, and all of us have had so many experiences that we were surprised, basically personally surprised by somebody who mistreated us or misunderstood us, or we surprised or misunderstood or mistreated the others. So simply those experiences are the ones that have really made us to really look at the culture and what does it mean to work with people from different cultures.
Definitely.
You know, I should have kept, I paid attention to the presentation. I did not really read the chat, so I'm reading them right now. To you others have an accent. None of us should ever have to apologize for our accents. You've done a fabulous job, and I appreciate what you have taught us immensely. Thank you. You know, I'm so aware of my accent, and especially when I am recorded, my accent is just thicker. But it is what it is. I have it. Can't get rid of it. I'm glad that you like the idea of differences are not deficit. This has been important for me because sometimes people see differences and they really, I'm getting emotional again. They really think of us as less. Okay. Well, if somebody will take part 3, I'd love to listen to to your experiences. Maybe we could have a US American therapist. They can actually tell us what are some of their experiences with people like me. That would be a fun one to watch.
Well, this is great. Did anyone have any other questions or any other comments that they wanted to make before we wrap up today? I know we've gone over a little bit. If not, I will make sure that I'll post this one more time in the chat. Everyone should have the evaluation. Again, if you didn't receive a certificate for November the 28th, I will send that one out to you this week as well. So watch for that. And if you run into any issues with the evaluation, please let me know. I'm willing to send it to a different email address, or if we need to work through troubleshooting the link for any reason, just let me know. All right. Great. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. I don't believe we have scheduled any other classes for the rest of December, so we'll take a break the rest of this month, but we should be back up and running in January. So watch for emails, and we'll let you know when the next class is ready, okay?
Thank you so much, guys.
And thank you, Vilsa, for your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you.